I narrowly escaped death in a car crash, but my parents ignored it for my brother's award ceremony. Now they're demanding I use my savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal, and I said no. About 2 weeks ago, I, a 32-year-old woman, was in a devastating car accident. Another vehicle slammed into me from the side as I drove home from work. The collision was so intense that my car flipped over. Paramedics later told me I was lucky to have survived. I ended up needing urgent surgery for internal bleeding, 2 fractured ribs, and a severely injured leg. After the operation, I spent a week in the hospital, recovering and trying to process everything. Being there was exhausting, both physically and emotionally. All I wanted was for my parents to visit. The moment I regained consciousness, I expected them to rush to my side upon hearing about the crash. Even a brief visit would have meant the world to me. Instead, they didn't show up for days. I kept waiting for a call or a visit, but nothing came. It wasn't until 4 days later that I even got a text from them. To clarify, my parents were fully aware of what happened. The hospital confirmed they had reached out multiple times, as my parents are listed as my emergency contacts. The nurses said they got through to them the day after I was admitted, but my parents seemed indifferent. That hurt deeply, but I tried to rationalize it, thinking maybe they were tied up or something urgent had come up. Thankfully, my belongings, including my phone, survived the crash. I sent them messages every 5 or 6 hours, but they never responded. Every day in the hospital felt like a nightmare. I tried to give my parents the benefit of the doubt because I desperately wanted familiar faces, but it grew harder by the hour. Luckily, I wasn't completely alone. Friends from out of state contacted some local relatives who stepped in. On the 6th day, a family friend visited and casually mentioned how wonderful it was that my brother was being honored at an awards event. I had no idea what she meant. She explained, surprised that I wasn't aware. It turned out my parents skipped visiting me to attend my brother's award ceremony. They knew I was in the hospital but chose to prioritize his moment of glory over supporting me during a traumatic time. They were so focused on preparing for his event that they delayed contacting me. Their focus was on how his ceremony made them look, not on their daughter's suffering. Let me make it clear. I'm not jealous of my brother or his achievements. I understand why they'd be proud of him. He's talented and has worked hard for his success. The issue is that he's always been the golden child. Since childhood, he's been showered with praise for everything he does, while I've been largely overlooked. He's now thriving at a major company, and this award was a big deal for him. But I was recovering from life-threatening surgery. A visit or even a quick call to check on me was the least they could have done. All I wanted was for them to show they cared, and I got nothing. They didn't seem fazed that I could have died. I felt angry and humiliated, unable to justify their actions. I decided to confront them. I sent a message expressing my shock that they valued my brother's award over my health. I told them how much their absence hurt me. For the first time since the accident, they replied quickly, and I wish they hadn't. Their response only deepened my pain. They initially tried to justify their absence, saying my brother's award was a rare milestone they couldn't miss. I pointed out that they could have visited me earlier and still attended his event. Eventually, they stopped arguing and said it wasn't worth visiting me when my brother was out there making the family proud. That cut deeper than I can describe. It felt like I was an afterthought. Sadly, this wasn't new. My brother has always been their golden child. Everything he did was celebrated. Every milestone, scholarships, a high-profile job, perfect grades, was a family event. Meanwhile, I was always in the shadows. Even when I did well, it was never enough. My mistakes were treated as catastrophes, and I never got the same support. It felt like they'd already labeled me a disappointment, and nothing I did could change that. A week after my brother's ceremony, my parents showed up at the hospital unannounced. I was confused, as I'd stopped expecting anything from them after our last exchange. I knew them well enough to sense they weren't there out of concern. They arrived with forced smiles and a bouquet, attempting small talk about my recovery, but their minds were clearly elsewhere. I told them to get to the point, knowing whatever they wanted would upset me. Their lack of care when I nearly died was insulting enough. I didn't need their fake concern. It didn't take long for the truth to come out. My mother broke down, revealing that my brother had been arrested for fraud at his company. He'd been caught siphoning funds into his personal investments by falsifying records. After an internal probe, the company turned everything over to the police, and he was arrested after a colleague tipped off the higher-ups. He now faces serious charges like wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. My parents had already drained much of their savings hiring lawyers for him. They came to me because they couldn't afford his bail. They asked me to dip into the savings I'd built as a project manager at an IT firm and even asked if I knew anyone who could pull strings. It felt like I was just a tool to fix my brother's mess, not their daughter. I was still in pain, physically and emotionally, and couldn't believe they'd ask for help after everything. It was a gut punch. They didn't care when I was alone and scared in a hospital bed. But now that their golden child was in trouble, they needed me. Part of me felt guilty, wondering if I should help for the family's sake. But another part was furious. Why should I bail out the brother who's always had everything handed to him? My parents have always shielded him from consequences, and now they expected me to do the same. I told them I wouldn't help. I said even if I had the money, I wouldn't feel obligated to use it for him. I reminded them that they hadn't even visited me and made it clear who they valued more. They called me selfish, insisting families should stick together. They warned I'd regret not helping my brother, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. Honestly, my brother has always been their priority. No matter how hard I tried, I was never enough. They wanted me to forget all the times they sidelined me, ignored me, or made me feel worthless. For the first time, I felt in control by saying no, and I wasn't going to give that up. I'm lying in my hospital bed now, torn between anger and guilt. My parents haven't spoken to me since I refused, and I know they're upset, but I can't care anymore. I'm done chasing their approval. I've spent too long trying. They keep saying family should stay united, making me feel like I might be the bad guy for standing my ground after everything they've done. But their lifelong treatment of me, especially now, is something I can't forgive. I've had enough, but I'm unsure where to start. Update 1. Thank you all for supporting my original post. It helped me stand firm, and though I didn't expect to update so soon, a lot has happened. I was discharged from the hospital a few days after my parents' visit. I can walk with crutches due to my leg fracture, and breathing is still painful as my ribs heal. I was eager to get home, find some peace, and escape the chaos. But that hope vanished when I saw my parents waiting outside my apartment door. They must have called the hospital to learn my discharge time as I hadn't told them. They didn't waste a moment. Before I could even get my keys out, they started berating me, furious that I wouldn't help my brother. It was the angriest I've ever seen them. They were more upset about my refusal than about my brother's fraud. They ranted about how family comes first, calling me selfish and spiteful. They accused me of using this situation to get back at them for favoring my brother. They didn't care that I was still recovering from a near-fatal accident. To them, I was just an obstacle to saving their precious son. They even said they expected me to step up now, that this was my chance to prove I wasn't a disappointment and could be part of the family. It was absurd. They basically admitted I wasn't part of their family unless I helped my brother. Things escalated when I firmly said I wouldn't do it. My mother sobbed at my doorstep, yelling that they'd already lost one child and were now losing two, accusing me of punishing them for loving him more. My dad, meanwhile, got angrier, calling me heartless and selfish, saying I didn't care about the family and would regret it when they were gone. I was exhausted, barely able to stand on my crutches, and being told I was a horrible person for not fixing my brother's mess. Their admission that they loved my brother more only made it worse. I stood my ground, threatening to call the police if they didn't leave, and refused to pay a cent for his bail or legal fees. They finally left, but not before hurling more insults. A few days later, my brother's case hit the news. The fraud was much bigger than we thought. Police found evidence he'd been diverting company funds for over a year, some laundered through fake accounts in his name. They also discovered he helped colleagues hide their embezzled funds, leading to additional charges of conspiracy and money laundering. He could face significant prison time if convicted. The fallout has been brutal. My parents are panicking. For years, they bragged about my brother's success, and now his reputation is ruined. People aren't buying their claims that it's all a misunderstanding. My dad even lost a major client when news spread about his son's fraud case. They're scrambling and clearly don't know how to handle it. Of course, they came back to me, desperate this time. They said they needed my help just this once to get through this, claiming it was a chance to fix things and keep the family together. But I knew what they meant, keeping up the illusion that their perfect son did no wrong. I told them no again, and they've gone silent. No calls, no texts. They probably see me as a failure who abandoned the family. But honestly, I don't care anymore. It hurts to know they only saw me as a backup plan, someone to manipulate when things went wrong. But it also feels empowering to finally put myself first and refuse to please them. I won't help my brother, and I won't let them guilt me into fixing their mess. Update. Two things have gotten even messier, so here's an update for those asking about my situation. My brother sent me an email through a friend, as he can't use a phone in jail. I almost deleted it, thinking it was another guilt trip to get my help. Curiosity got the better of me, and I read it. In the email, he claimed he was framed. He admitted to being part of the fraud, but swore he wasn't the mastermind. He said higher-ups used him as a scapegoat to cover their own crimes, leaving him to take the fall while they walked free. He begged for my help, not for our parents, but to save the family from falling apart. That line hit me hard. He acknowledged how toxic our parents have been, admitting they've mistreated me and used him to boost their egos. It was strange to see him admit it, as he'd always gone along with it. But I couldn't shake the feeling he was saying whatever might convince me. His plea to save the family echoed what my parents have been saying since this started. Despite vowing to be done with this, I wondered if there was truth to his story. Was he really set up? Was I misjudging the situation? I needed to know. I spoke to a trusted lawyer friend who, while not involved in the case, pointed me to resources for more information. After digging, I found my brother's story wasn't entirely false. He was definitely guilty of fraud, but it seemed he wasn't the one pulling the strings. Higher-level executives had been siphoning company funds for years, using my brother as a pawn because he managed certain accounts. When things went wrong, they distanced themselves, leaving him to take the blame. I was torn. I was angry he got involved in something so shady, knowing full well what he was doing. He likely thought he'd never get caught. But I also felt a twinge of sympathy. It's tough knowing he was used by more powerful, experienced people who covered their tracks. I couldn't help but wonder if things would have been different if our parents hadn't raised him to believe he was untouchable. Their constant protection and praise probably made him think he could get away with anything. When I shared what I found with my parents, they were oddly quiet. I think they knew my brother wasn't blameless but refused to admit it. Instead, they stuck to their narrative, calling me selfish and heartless for not helping. Talking to them was like hitting a brick wall. I've decided to cut them off for good. I'm done with their manipulation. My brother made his choices, and he has to face the consequences, whether he was a pawn or not. My parents can deal with the mess they helped create. If the roles were reversed, I wouldn't ruin myself for someone who wouldn't lift a finger for me. Honestly, I feel more at peace than I have in years. I know I made the right call, even if my family disagrees. I'm done being treated like I don't matter. Thank you all for your support. Knowing I'm not alone has been a huge comfort. It's not been easy, but I'm standing my ground. Update 3. It's been over a month since my last update, and I have more to share. When my parents realized their insults and pleas wouldn't sway me, they took a new approach to make my life harder. They started calling my aunts, uncles, and cousins, painting me as selfish for not helping my brother. They made it sound like I was sitting on a fortune out of spite, claiming I was a monster who couldn't be trusted. I only found out when a cousin told me they were spreading lies, conveniently leaving out how they abandoned me in the hospital and only contacted me to help my brother. At first it hurt. Even after standing up for myself, I felt punished again. I thought I'd be left alone with no support. But something unexpected happened. Several distant relatives reached out to me instead of siding with my parents. It turns out my parents' favoritism toward my brother and their treatment of others had alienated many people over the years. I had no idea how deep it went. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years shared stories that shocked me. One aunt told me my brother once borrowed a large sum from her husband for a business venture that failed. When she tried to recover the money, my parents cut her off, calling her greedy and unsupportive. Another cousin said my brother once blamed a parking attendant for my uncle's car accident at a family event, and my parents backed him up, accusing my uncle of trying to ruin my brother's reputation. There were more stories like this, my parents covering up my brother's wrongs or silencing anyone who spoke out. One relative said my parents sabotaged a business partnership because they thought the partner wasn't prestigious enough for their son. Hearing this was both shocking and validating. I wasn't crazy. My parents have a history of sidelining others to protect my brother. For years, I thought I was the problem, that I wasn't good enough. Now I see it was never about me. They've always shielded my brother at all costs, even cutting off family members who challenged them. Why did they need my help so badly? Because I've built a solid life despite their neglect. As a project manager at a respected IT firm, I've saved wisely and built strong connections. They knew I had the resources, which is why they were so desperate, but they didn't realize I wouldn't help just because I could, especially for people who've treated me like an afterthought my whole life. As for my brother's case, my parents scraped together enough money from loans and favors to bail him out after I refused. But the investigation continued. A few weeks ago, my brother started cooperating with the authorities, providing information about the executives involved in the fraud. This helped the prosecution and earned him a reduced sentence, 1 year in prison followed by community service instead of a longer term. I don't feel better about it. His cooperation is fine, but it doesn't erase his choice to join the scheme. I doubt this will change him. He'll likely keep relying on my parents to clean up his messes. I've cut off contact with my parents permanently, something I should have done years ago. They're blocked on all platforms, and I've told my building's front desk not to let them in if they show up unannounced. I thought cutting ties would feel like a loss, but it's freeing. I'm done being their backup plan, scapegoat, or emotional punching bag. Surprisingly, I'm not sad about it. The relatives who reached out have been amazing. They've shown me I'm not alone, and for the first time in years, I feel supported. Many have invited me to family events my parents won't attend, and I'm excited to reconnect. One aunt apologized for not seeing the situation sooner. She always sensed something was off with how my parents treated me but stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Now she's one of my biggest supporters along with others. I have no idea what the future holds, but I'm hopeful for the first time. Thank you all for your support and advice. Your comments helped me see I'm not wrong for standing up for myself. It's been tough, but it feels incredible to finally take control of my life. If this story touched you and you connected with its emotions, make sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more true life tales and touching moments. Your support means everything to us and helps us continue creating content like this for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.